today, the Church of St. John the Lateran in Rome. This year it falls on a Sunday, but it's always considered to be a solemnity. Why? Why are we here setting one Sunday aside to honor a building that was built in the 300s? Well, let's find out how impressed you can be about this building. It was built by Constantine. Constantine was the one who in the 4th century made it possible for Christian religion and other religions to come above ground and to be seen. They no longer had to hide because he approved of them and supported them and often helped them. In fact, he built this particular building in 311, and by 313, having given it to the church, by 313 they were holding papal meetings and conferences and synods in the building. So that ought to impress us a little bit, I think. Would it impress you to know that it served as a papal household for many, many centuries? It was knocked down somewhat by either weather, nature, or by onslaught by enemies, and was always rebuilt. To this day, people still visit that beautiful church. Roman synods are still held there, and this is the one that surprises everybody. It's truly the Cathedral of Rome. It is the papal cathedral. It is even considered the cathedral of all of Christendom. And you're thinking, so why do we have St. Peter's? But this is the history. It was named after St. John the Baptist and St. John the Evangelist. So, is it worth celebrating that? It's a building, remember. Well, let me try this on and see if this helps you understand. I don't know how to break the news to you, but by the end of the new year, Mary Mother Church has to be closed, and we all have to move in with another group somewhere. You okay with that? Good, because I just made that up. But you didn't like it. You didn't like it because this is home, right? The buildings you've lived in for so long, sometimes for many decades, that you've raised your family in. Maybe you go back and now it's grandmother's house and you go back and there's just something on the walls, not necessarily pictures, although those could be there, but there's something about what took place in that house that makes it sacred in your life. Here's the amazing thing. This is called the Dedication Day. It's been honored since the 12th century. This is the dedication day of that particular John Lateran Basilica. We honored the building, but everybody who has ever gotten up to speak about it, and everybody who's wrote about it, always talks about, for about a sentence or two, about the building, and immediately moves to the people and says, but remember, the real jewels, the real importance of the building are the people who come into it. Immediately, when you dedicate a church these days, you read almost the same words. Some parish builds a new church and the bishop comes to dedicate it, and he reads the instructions about how to do that. He starts saying the prayers, and sure enough, there it is again. The church building is a holy place, and so are those who come within it. This feast, this solemnity, reminds us of some very important things in our own life. For example, the church building isn't really a church till the church shows up. Does that make sense? The church is not really a church in its full indication until the church comes and brings life to it. Now, people can travel. Many people go into a church when they used to keep them unlocked, and people would go in and visit. There was no adoration at that time. The tabernacle was sufficient, and people would go in and sit in the quiet of it. Even then, The church became a church because part of the church just came in. That's the importance of a building. It's the importance of where we gather. It gathers us together. It forms us. Just in how this particular group within this particular church sing, the type of music we use on occasions. You say, well, that's not what we do at the other church. Yeah, but you come into our house and it's a little different sometimes. This is the nature of this particular community. And yet, over and over again, we hear the same words. Paul says, the temple of God is holy, and you are that temple. The temple of God is holy, and you, singular or plural, are that temple. Imagine that. Do we really feel that? Do we know it? This feast tells us a lot, I think. It reminds us that we don't go to heaven alone, nor do we come to church in a singular fashion. Interesting word about the teaching on the obligation to be present. That originally belonged to the community. It was a reminder to the community. Sunday is a day of obligation, meaning that's the day the community gathers to remember who it is and to be nourished in who they want to be. So it's an obligation to gather the community. Now, if an individual says, "Gee, I just can't make it this day," well, okay, we understand, but you've kind of dismembered the community because one of the members is missing. It's seen in the communal sense. We don't travel to heaven alone. We don't mission alone. We mission as the body of Christ. We used to have a saying in the cathedral. I've probably shared this with you. People come in and immediately they come in the cathedral and they go, wow, that's so gorgeous. It's unbelievable. It's outstanding. Words fail me. And then we say, oh, but don't miss the really important mosaics are in the pews. The flesh and blood of the community. There's where the Spirit can settle in, and does. It reminds us that we come on Sunday and we have all of these seats because we have to come together as a community. The reason we sing an opening hymn, or any hymn, is again to join us. We've come in separately, and now we need something that pulls us together with one voice, which you've done already. To understand this, we turn to two readings. One reading is Ezekiel, who has great news for us, a great challenge, and Jesus, who also presents us with a challenge. Ezekiel gives us the image of the Jerusalem temple, and he talks poetically about this water that flows out from the temple. And wherever that water flows, everything grows, everything blooms. It even freshens the Dead Sea where it winds up. Well, we all can get that image. That we don't come in here to pat ourselves on the back necessarily and say, okay, I'm going back home now. There's a mission involved. We're only here momentarily. And then we go back out and say, how do we carry this out to the world? How do we get people enlivened about what we're enlivened about? Because that's our mission. It may be the mission of one church to bring food for Rock Church. It could be the mission of the entire Universal Church to have that wonderful organization, that one that goes for all over the world, bringing bread, bringing food, bringing materials, building houses, the Catholic Relief Services. The largest charitable organization in the world, because the water has to keep flowing out from us. But then there's Jesus, who does an amazing thing in the gospel today, and it's kind of scandalizes us, because it seems, I never expected Jesus to be so angry as to push tables around and have a whip in his hand. That's called a prophetic sign. It's kind of it's kind of overbuilt, but it's done so to get the passion of Jesus. Why is he so upset? Those animals that are there, the changing of coins, that's all part of Jewish worship. You come in and you can't use the civil coin, so you have to change it for the Jewish coin in order to offer it. You have to bring in the offerings that will be slaughtered and offered to God in place of ourselves. That has to be done. What's Jesus' problem? It's all become routine. It's become routine. They're more interested in the trading going on. They're more interested in the profit they might be making than they are of the worship. What's the difference between ritual and routine? We do ritual when we can't find the right words. Two people suddenly look at each other and want to make up, and they may say, "I'm sorry," and the other one says, "I'm sorry," and they hug. They just hold each other so strongly because they're back together. And that's kind of like a ritual. The words wouldn't be enough. We have to express it in a ritual. The burial of a military man or woman is quite a wonderful ritual, with the trumpet sounding, with the flag folding, with the shooting of the rifles. It's hard to keep my tears back when I'm at one of those, because it says so much about the honor to this person and what this person stood for. Ritual is when we just can't find words enough. There aren't enough words to describe God. Even love's a difficult word to really express, and so we find rituals. And when the rituals stop, you don't send me flowers anymore. Something says, "Oh, what have I been forgetting?" And that's when I've heard husbands say to their wives, "Oh, you know I love you. And you love me, right?" And she says, "Well." I remember one husband said, "You know I love you. I get up every day and go to work and bring food in." She said, "You'd have to do that if you were single." So there's a difference between liturgy being ritual and routine. And if it grows routine, if our hearts aren't in it, if we're looking at our watches, if we're saying, "Well, let's get this out of the way," then that's the time we lock the doors and we put it up for sale. For God's temple is holy, and you are that temple.